Okay, that should be it. I shared a link to the agenda in case anybody hasn't seen it yet. So welcome to another tools call. As a reminder, in case any of you are new, this is a call essentially to talk about anything relating to tools in Go or for Go. So you can think command Go, the tools repo, Go please, and that sort of thing. A bit of a meta point, just an FYI that we follow the UK/EU DST time zone, meaning that we just entered DST, so we shifted by 1 hour. And also this one meeting was delayed by 30 minutes just because of a conflict at Google at the last minute. So just FYI.
Thank you for accommodating our conflict.
No worries. I mean, it worked for me. We just pretty much hope that it would work for anybody else. But worst case scenario, we just do 30 minutes, which should be fine given the agenda. On to IDE editor tools. I think maybe that's Rob.
Yeah, I just added this since there was nothing there. I just wanted to say that we've made a lot of progress on IDE scaling. And if you install, Go Please at master is a lot more stable than it used to be. I think we're pretty close to cutting a pre-release, and we're seeing good results in terms of memory usage. So if that has been a problem for you, you can sort of get a sneak peek by installing Go Please at master. We'll also advertise it a little bit more widely once we cut the pre-release, hopefully this week or the next. We'll advertise it in I think initially in Slack, as well as many of the issues where people have been complaining about performance over the past few years. So I thought I would mention that now, but we can move on. I just wanted to say.
I continue to use master. It continues to work fine. I have, maybe it's placebo, but it seems to start slightly faster nowadays. But I haven't actually measured it.
It does start faster. Depends on the size of it. You won't notice it so much on smaller repositories, but on larger repositories like Kubernetes, at least on my laptop, we went from around 25 seconds with a, well, there's no difference between a cold and warm cache previously. But we went from 25 seconds to 10 seconds with a cold cache, and with a warm cache, especially with some of the recent Go list optimizations, if you build Go at tip, we can get down as low as 3 seconds. So a pretty big change there in terms of startup time, which would benefit people using editors like Vim that are more prone to short-lived sessions.
Out of curiosity, if Go Please can benefit from a tip feature, how does it tell whether tip is new enough? Like timestamp based or?
Oh, there's no API change.
Yeah, we just made Go list faster, and yeah.
Sounds good. On a personal note, I also switched editors again, just because apparently that's a fun thing to do. I started using Helix, I guess it's pronounced. It's based on NeoVim, but it's different. But it has native LSP support. And it appears to be a fairly opinionated implementation of an LSP client. So it spotted, for example, that one case where Go Please was sending nulls instead of empty lists. But otherwise, it seems to work perfectly fine. So I might be running into more bugs just because I might be one of 3 people that uses this editor with Go Please. But more coverage, I guess.
Yeah, please file bugs as you find them. We do tend to be sensitive to different behavior across LSP clients. Unfortunately, sort of VS Code sets the standard, but if there are examples where we could satisfy both editors simultaneously, for example, by sending empty slices instead of nulls, we should do that.
Cool. Anything else for this category? At least not on the agenda.
Nothing for me.
On to command Go. I'll let Brian go first in case he has any overarching updates or points before we go into the issues.
I do have one significant update, which is that the really obnoxious go-get graph pruning bug has a draft fix that's passing tests. I'm cleaning it up for code review. So if you are affected by the obnoxious go-get graph cleaning bug, then keep an eye out for a CL that you can patch in and see if it fixes you. And also, if you run the fixed go-get, I'll put a link in the notes. If you run the fixed go-get, it should produce a go.mod file that is then compatible with all the old Go versions. So like if you go get and it fixes your problem, then you can just go get with TIP and everyone on older versions will still be okay using your module. It was a pretty gnarly graph theory algorithm. Beyond that, Michael, do you have any notes on other command go things that are going on?
I guess the main thing is Brian and I are spending some more time looking at package aliasing. So hopefully we can have something to show soon. Other than that, I spent some time, like we mentioned earlier, working on Go list slowness, especially in the cases that it's invoked by Go please.
Just to remind myself, because it's been some time, package aliases means replacing one module with another module. That what does it mean again?
It means a package says, you don't want me, you want this other package, and then it forwards itself to the other package, and the imports of the first package are internally replaced with imports of the second package.
If you have a link, that would be useful because I don't remember seeing this.
I don't think we've presented anything on it yet.
I'll put a link to the issue in the notes.
Oh, there's an issue. It's an issue?
There's an issue for module aliasing, and it's kind of, I've been treating it as the umbrella for package aliasing as well.
I think I was remembering module aliasing. That's what
We
confused me.
might, so we might solve module aliasing by just introducing package aliasing, and then to alias a module, you just alias all the packages in that module. Maybe. We're thinking about it.
Brian, is this the old sort of module replace semantics issue?
Yes, although it's
Yeah.
unclear at this point whether we're going to change the replace semantics or just replace them.
Okay, on to the first item in the agenda. I see that there's been a couple of responses that I haven't looked at yet. But essentially, I've been running into the lack of stamped version in the main module when you do a build within VCS. So I know that I can't ask for an ETA because it's unlikely that this will get done for 121. But maybe I'll take a look if it's not too much work for somebody from the outside to do. I don't, naively, I don't think it's that complicated, but I'm ready for Brian to tell me maybe that's a wrong assumption to make.
The logic for actually producing a pseudo version from a commit is surprisingly subtle. That said, it's fairly self-contained, and you might have some success factoring it out into a function, and then you can call that function, and probably things will be okay.
I'll take that as mild encouragement. Okay, I'll give it a go. And as a follow-up, something that I've realized is back in the day, I had a lot of my projects use LD flags version equals, tag or whatever else in my build commands or scripts. And when we got build VCS naively, I thought, oh, good, I can get rid of this. Because what I said earlier is slightly wrong. The main module does get VCS info, but it doesn't get a module version. That is the distinction, right? But the problem is that many downstreams, like Linux distros, they build from release archives, not from VCS, meaning no VCS info, meaning you still get nothing, right? Unless you insert it somehow. So we could and we should fix this bug, this feature with this issue with the main module not having a module version. But if there's no VCS info, there's nothing for us to fill. So I'm wondering, what should we do with these downstreams that build from files? And what I personally do is I have a convention of main.version as a string. But I don't know if others do the same. I don't know if it's something we should document as a semi-fallback.
I just wanted to say, we don't have a good solution for this for GoPlease. We have a rather involved release process, which involves committing a change to a hard-coded version string. So I would love a better solution for that as well.
I'll mention one example. For example, Q, which is built on Go, has a main package, and it does its own version resolution the smart way with module version and VCS. But then if you install it for like Debian or Arch Linux or something, and you ask its version, it will tell you Devil, which is incredibly unhelpful and sad. I slightly like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So on the other hand, thinking about like packages installed through Debian or similar, it is not uncommon for people who package tools on Linux distributions, especially, to apply patches to them before they ship them out. And one of the nice things about having the devel string as the version that's reported for things is that it correctly reports that this might not be a pristine copy of the source. And if we give people a really easy mechanism for saying, oh yeah, this is the version string to put in, and we don't distinguish, like, this is an authoritative version string reported by version control versus, yeah, somebody just told me it was this version. Like, there may be some useful signal in the fact that it's not stamped with the same version string that it would have in version control.
That is a good point, and maybe another side of the same argument is that if you install a tool with a package manager, you should ask the package manager for the version of the thing, not the thing itself. But at the end of the day, I think the users will still try to ask the tool what version it is, and if it says Devil, it's confusing and weird. But that's a good point. I've also encountered an even nastier case, which is that sometimes some distros do builds inside a Git repo. That's not actually the upstream Git repo. It's like a fork Git repo, if that makes sense. And they apply their patches on top of yours, right? So then you end up with a pseudo version that's completely off. It might have no tags. It might have a timestamp that's completely off, and so on.
Again, though, that's a positive signal, right?
I remain unconvinced. I'm not sure, but that is a good point. Maybe telling people to stamp the main version is not a good idea.
Or maybe we should give people a way to stamp the main version that makes it clear that it didn't come from the same source as a normal version. We should do some thinking about this. I think there's a real use case here, and it probably does need a real solution. But it's not intuitively obvious to me what the right solution is. But I do think it's an interesting problem that we should actually think more about how to address.
I'll bring up one last idea before we spend too much time on this. What if I could do LD flags equals runtime debug dot version or main module version or something like that equals, and then the version string, and that gets stamped as the main module's version string with something at the end saying like manual or stamped or something like that.
I would like people to mostly view passing the LD flags as like peeling off the warranty sticker when you crack open your new laptop. And so I would like to find a way to address this use case that does not involve passing LD flags explicitly.
I mean, sure, it could be promoted as its own flag, but as like a low-level mechanism, I think something like that could work.
Possible. We have this build info mechanism that has like it records general flags in it. It would be pretty straightforward to add another flag to the build info that just says, you know, this is the version string you passed to me. And then if somebody runs go version -m, then they'll get that along with the module info.
That's a good point. I guess I could stick it as a tag, even though that would be horrible. Okay. The next item is also mine. I was looking into a bug that somebody reported on Windows for one of my tools, and they run into the classic too many arguments error, meaning that somebody tried to build a Go package with so many files or a long enough directory that they run into the 30K limit, I think it is. And I thought to myself, oh, that's an easy fix. I just need to add response file support to my tool that's run with toolexec. So go build toolexec. So that it can know how to parse those at files like the compiler and linker. But Go build currently whitelists what tools it passes response files to. So it's only the compiler, linker, the CGO generator, and like something else, one more. But anything else like GCC or toolexec tools do not use response files. So that means that it's not even my fault. Like the error happens when you try to call me, so I can't do anything about it.
We should probably figure out why that happens, and if we would be invoking a tool like compile or link in a way that would trigger response files, then if we have a tool exec that's wrapping compile or link, then we should pass the same flags that we would use for response files to that.
Yes.
Because usually the tool exec is something like a really straightforward pass through, like time. Right?
Yes, correct. And the code is kind of silly about this. Like it essentially looks at the first argument to see if it's compiled, but if you run toolexec, the first argument has been pushed back, right? So then it doesn't find it. But I guess the follow-up question I was going to ask is, there's an open issue that I linked as a sub-item about people asking to use response files with other programs like GCC for the same reason. And I wonder if the whitelist is a good idea, because at least on Windows, I think it makes sense to always use response files, because if the argument list is so long, it's probably going to fail anyway. So if a tool doesn't support response files, it should just fail.
I think we need to know, like, in order to pass response files to a tool, we need to know what flag it uses for response files. And so, like, if we know what flag it's likely to use, then yeah, we should probably just always use it.
Oh, so it's not like the Go compiler where it's just a regular argument. Some tools want a special flag.
I don't know. And that's kind of my point, that I don't know.
That's a good point. Okay. I'll probably just send a small fix for toolexec then. And I'll also mention that we've got Kim on the call, and I'm going to call him a Windows expert, but he can correct me. But he's employed by Microsoft partly to improve Go. And he's been doing a bunch of stuff on the compiler and runtime. So if any of you have Windows problems, you might be able to convince him to help. We can't hear you. You're very quiet. Should have given a heads up that I was going to call you out.
Yes.
Yep, that's good.
Yes. Okay. So I wouldn't call me a Windows expert, but I'm good finding information about Windows, and I have contacts here inside Microsoft that can help me if I find the blocker. So yes, feel free to contact me if you have any problem with Windows in any tool. In fact, now that I'm here, just want to share what I'm working on currently. But I think it will be interesting in the future for Windows users. So we are, my team is developing a tool that generates a PDB file from a Go binary. For those of you that don't know what's a PDB file, so it's a file that contains the back information to the back or to understand what's happening in an application that crashed. So when you have a crash dump, a Windows crash dump, you can use a PDF file to wind the stack in that crash dump, for example, or to evaluate variables that could be valuable for understanding what happened. So currently the Go binaries only contain dwarf information, which is not a fair citizen in Windows. So it cannot be used in WinDBG, for example, or Visual Studio. So all these tools understand PDF files. And yeah, so we have a very advanced tool at the moment that generates a PDF file that is really useful in a lot of situations. We plan to open source this in the near future. And we are still wondering if it will be like a separate tool or we want to try to upstream it in the Go compiler or linker. And in fact, not the time here. So what we use a lot the GoSim package, so the back GoSim package, which is quite limited, mostly because it doesn't expose any inlining information. And so we had to fork this package. I saw that there is someone at Google is implementing a new model called, or a new package called, I think it's Go debug or Go binary, debug Go binary. So do you know which is the state of that package?
I recall some discussions with the compiler team about like what to call it and where to put it. I don't recall. I think for now it's intended to be internal, but I would check the proposal weekly notes for whether and when it shows up there.
Yeah, okay.
There's also the compiler team has their own separate office hours. So if you're interested in talking about that, you might
Yes.
check your schedule. I'm pretty sure that I talked with at least Austin and Terry about some designs. I'm not sure who else was in that conversation, but that's like folks on the compiler team are thinking about inlining and they're thinking about debugging, and the intersection of those is, as you note, pretty awkward today.
Yes. And yeah, so Daniel, the GoSim package is a package that decodes inlining, debugging information in the Go binary. Like things like where if a given address is inlined or not, or where there is a stack jump, or things like this, and we need that to reconstruct the inlining tree for all the functions. We need to get the information from the Go binary and encode it in the PDB format. Thank you.
Thank you. And apologies again for the surprise call out. I didn't expect.
Mhm.
I didn't mean it that way. Anything else for Command Go? At least nothing else is in the agenda.
I think that's it on our side. There is a bunch of work for the forward and backward compatibility proposals. Russ has been putting a bunch of stuff into 1.21. So there's a Go toolchain proposal. There's a lot more Go debug support coming in. I think everybody who wanted to discuss about that has had the opportunity to discuss on the proposals. So I guess there's not much to share other than there's implementation progress on that.
Something I will briefly mention is that I think the forwards compatibility proposal, so the one that downloads Go versions to run them instead of the current one, I think that's got potential to be as controversial as the original telemetry proposal. For example, at the local meetup last month with 20 people or so, I brought it up as one proposal that people might not have seen, and almost everybody was very surprised by it and initially very against it. I mean, developers, they don't like if you run Go build and it runs a program downloaded from the internet. As a first reaction, it's not unexpected, but FYI. On to miscellaneous. I see the first one is mainly just a note, so I'll skip it. There's an FYI about Xtools Go pointer. I imagine that's Brian's.
I added the note, but Alan wrote the proposal.
Also, Dominic is hiding on Slack in the tools channel. He says he can be summoned if his presence is required. So if any of you want to ask him any questions or anything, we can get him on the call. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it in terms of the agenda. Yeah, go for it.
Hey, sorry, just a non-agenda item. I was curious. I was playing with some of the GoPlease linters or whatever the Go analysis linter set. I was curious why the nilness linter was not enabled by default. If there's a reason for that, I couldn't find anything obvious.
I can answer that. So the nilness linter relies on SSA facts, which historically have been too expensive in terms of memory for us to use. That's all changed now because we are properly serializing and deserializing facts from disk. So we may want to revisit that decision in the future. But I think SSA and Shadow, there's a few analyzers that actually use SSA representation, and we've intentionally avoided enabling them by default because it has, in the past, it had a significant effect on the memory footprint of GoPlease, which was already problematic.
Oh, sounds good. Sorry, I wasn't asking specifically about GoPlease, but GoVet.
Oh.
Because GoVet, not only does GoVet not enable nilness by default, it's not even compiled into GoVet by default, even though it is in the default linter list on GoPasses.
I apologize. I had my answer queued up before you even finished talking because this has come up in the past. So I don't know specifically why it's not enabled in GoVet, except that we have a very, I would say, high standard for enabling things by default in GoVet. They should have essentially 0 false positives. That may be the case for nilness. So in that case, I don't know why it's not enabled by default, but maybe someone else has a better sense of this.
I would say if you think it should be enabled by default, file the proposal and see what happens.
That sounds reasonable.
Something to mention is that lack of false positives is not the only criteria. There's 3 of them, and they're described in that README I linked to, even though that's a slightly older version. But if I recall correctly, it's well, it says correctness, frequency, precision. So it's those three of them. So it might be, for example, that nilness doesn't find problems often enough in practice. So that's frequency. And compared to the cost, it might not be worthwhile.
I have a counterpoint to whether it finds issues or not, but which is that I just ran it on a random code base that I'm working with, and it did find issues. So, and they were legitimate issues. So yeah, it might be worth actually just like following up with a proposal.
Sounds good. I'll leave the floor open for 10 seconds in case there's anything else to bring up before we close the meeting. Okay, so we had said July the 12th for the next call, given that the 5th is close to a US holiday. So that would put us probably on the first or second week of the 122 release window being open. So I think it's a good point to start talking about work to happen in 122. And I don't think the rest of the freeze is going to be particularly exciting in terms of tools. Cool. So see you all in just over a couple of months. And I imagine the next call will be in September to avoid August. Have a good day.
Bye.